Hi, I'm Ryan Manchee with Basis Technologies, and we're talking advertising, innovation, and marketing inspiration. And I've got Jessica Padula with Nespresso.
Yeah.
Jessica, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is at Nespresso?
Sure. I have the best job. I like to say I work for the best coffee company in the world, running marketing. So I'm the VP of marketing at Nespresso for the US market specifically. And then a couple of months ago, I took on a dual hat role as the interim head of sustainability.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a really interesting addition to the role, certainly. So it's fun.
How did that come about? How does marketing and sustainability, how does that tie in together? Is that a natural fit?
It's more natural than you might originally assume. I mean, first and foremost, the fact of the matter is we had someone leave the company. So that's how it came about. My CEO said, hey, you get voluntold to try something new. But there's two things about it. One is it's a personal passion of mine. I think it's really a big reason why a lot of employees come to Nespresso and stay with Nespresso, because sustainability is in our DNA. It's been in our bones since day one. We're actually just celebrating our 20th anniversary of what we call our AAA Sustainable Quality Program this year. And that's a program that we co-created with the Rainforest Alliance to actually be on the ground, hands-on with farmers, making sure that they're growing and building their coffee farms in a sustainable way, teaching them the skills they need, not only to charge a higher price for their coffee, which we are glad to pay as Nespresso, but also to make sure that we produce coffee in a sustainable way so that coffee exists 50 years from now. And so it's this mutually beneficial relationship. And it's core to a coffee company, right? Any farming company should have sustainability top of mind. So it is more natural to connect the two than you might think, because I think you can do that from an operational standpoint as a business, but you also have to tell people about it so that they understand why they might be paying a premium for the coffee, why they should care, and why they should stay with us as a brand. So it's really interwoven, and it's been a fun addition to my scope.
Yeah. Well, and I love that I imagine, like you said, it was kind of already part of the marketing message, and now you've got even more visibility to be able to tell that story in an even more effective way.
Exactly. I'm learning a lot about the things on the side of sustainability that I didn't necessarily know, all the things that maybe consumers don't translate as well to consumers' greenhouse gases and scope 3 and all of these things. Yeah. It's really complex and a very significant learning curve for me, but I worked incredibly closely with our previous head of sustainability. So from that standpoint, it's actually it's been a fun experience for me to take and work more closely with the sustainability team. Mm-hmm. And say, now you kind of get to be marketers, right? Like they have strengths that I don't have and vice versa. And they're really, I think the team is getting some richness out of not just doing sustainability, but figuring out how to tell my stories, both internally and externally, which is what marketing's all about.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything that you've discovered since you've taken on this kind of expanded interim role about the sustainable practices that you all have that may surprise consumers and maybe some other marketers out there?
Yeah, I've long known a lot about our recycling efforts. We spend a lot of time and effort and energy making sure that we're a single serve category and recycling is critical to your existence, right? But I did not appreciate the legislation side of recycling and recyclable claims. I've learned so much about all the various states have different legislation and different politics involved and who's saying what. And it's really actually a threat if you think of it from a business standpoint. It's really smart from a consumer standpoint to be able to continue to say certain things about our product, like we're 100% recyclable or things like that. What is required based on this legislation to make certain claims? And it's varying by state. And it's just way more complicated than we ever thought. And it's actually accelerating, I think, our focus on doing the right thing. So that's where maybe like government and business is strengthening, maybe in a way I didn't appreciate.
Yeah, that's good. That's very interesting. So if we take a step back, I think the sustainability piece, it's huge, and it sounds like a critical component of Nespresso's marketing for all the right reasons, not only because it's the right thing to do, but it's fascinating and it's something that consumers should care about. But even more broadly, when you think about Nespresso's branding and kind of approach at storytelling, creating those connections with those consumers, those prospective consumers, What do you think makes that so special? What's the kind of, I don't want to say secret sauce, but the secret mix, I guess, maybe, if we're thinking about coffee, that creates those really powerful connections with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it starts with the product. We have an unparalleled product. And I think then instead of just talking just about the product, we talk really, when we tell our stories, we talk about how it impacts you as a person emotionally. Yes, it's the taste. And you start there and you say, this is the best quality coffee. What does quality mean? It tastes amazing, but it also makes me feel something. It's been an incredible journey at Nespresso. And the consistent thing throughout 7 years there has been every time I meet someone, they don't just tell me, oh, I like your product or I have an espresso machine. They tell me the exact moment they discovered it. I was on vacation. They tell me every day I have my coffee here and the sun's shining. And it's this visceral connection to the coffee, which inherently makes the storytelling that much more fun and much more relatable. And so I think really thinking consumer first is key to us, and really thinking about coffee being an emotional part of your life. I mean, for some people, it's just functional. It gets me out of bed, I go, and maybe those aren't our customers, but when you really talk about the core of Nespresso, they want to feel a part of this. Their whole life is sort of hinging on this amazing Nespresso moment, wherever it falls in their day. And so the ability as a marketer to tap into that and tell stories in those ways, I think it's somewhat unexpected, and it's really memorable, and it stands out, I think, in a crowded category of just product benefits or the same sustainability stories. We really connect it to what does it mean to you as a person.
Yeah, I love that. I want to dig in a little bit about, because I think about my experiences. I'm not a Nespresso owner yet.
We can change this.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
We'll work on this.
Yeah, but my experiences have been traveling, right, at various hotels. And it's always been a delightful experience of like, oh, I've got these, these simple little pods and put this in. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was so quick and easy and it's wonderful and just a delightful experience. So I imagine that's part of the strategy. But when you think about those different customer touch points for the kind of new, the maybe kind of casual, and then the like hyper loyalists, as you're kind of describing, how do you think about all those different touch points? And are there elements of that you've maybe worked on more recently as part of the marketing strategy to be able to develop that and refine that just a little bit more to kind of move them further along as like more regular Nespresso consumers?
First of all, I love that you started with B2B and that's been your experience of the brand, because it's an incredible source of volume and growth and opportunity for us as a brand and a business. Those hotel placements, I'm on vacation, you're already in a great state of mind. And then, it's sort of this surprising like aha if you've never seen Nespresso. And then you're constantly associated as a brand with some like amazing moment in their life. And we have so much more opportunity to grow in that space. I was actually just talking to our B2B sales director yesterday about that. So it's very well timed. But to answer your question, again, every marketer knows like the funnel is dead. It's not like this very linear thing anymore. We actually use what we call a consumer experience loop. And it's a proprietary tool that we sort of created as Nespresso to really represent the fact that yes, you buy into Nespresso by buying a machine, but then we want to keep you purchasing the coffee and what's going to unlock that. And we really think about all those different stages, not just awareness to consideration to purchase to repurchase, but really all the thoughtfulness that goes into, it's actually like an infinity shape, which is why I'm drawing a figure 8. But it helps us to really pinpoint the different unlocks for consumers at those key moments and what's needed, what our brand has to offer, and where are those like little incremental opportunities. To your point, like how do you fine tune little things? A really good example is we've started to think more about lifetime value than just the acquisition cost, right? Because again, you're kind of in this circular moment. So you look at the landscape of retention, and that's all about subscription in the US, right? Every business is trying to unlock subscription. We have a subscription offering, but it's not where it should be. And so we know that if we can just crack that, we're going to be more competitive, but we also can personalize in a different way because we're a D2C brand first and foremost. And so by connecting to you one-to-one, by understanding what you're purchasing, what your purchase cycles are, what you like, how you add, what offers you take up as part of this ongoing purchase, we can really fine tune and make it more enjoyable for you as a customer, but also more lucrative for us as a business. And it's really been fun for me, especially in this role, to really learn more about that side of the loop, that retention and loyalty and what's driving that love, not just financial benefits, but real meaning.
Yeah, well, it's very impressive, the level of sophistication where you all are at, and like continue to refine that. I think it's fascinating to kind of think through how that can continue to be refined, and then also open up those new opportunities and know where can you go even bigger on the D2C side and expand that. So I think that's really smart. That's interesting. And you talked about this a little bit, that coffee is a very personal experience. Everybody has their kind of preferred flavors, the way that they take it, the way that they want to make it. When you think about the marketing, do you look at personalization? You talked a little bit about like understanding some of that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how personalization plays a greater role? Maybe some of the things that you've done, and then maybe even some of the things you're planning, if you want to share.
Yeah, I mean, data drives it all, right? I think at the end of the day, for a while, I grew up more in like the social and digital space, and content was king. And now, you could say data is king in many ways. And we're really lucky because we have that first party data. So a good example would be, maybe there's two to share. One would be, we started polling or adding like simple surveys in some of our emails to say, hey, we think that we see you're buying a coffee that's maybe customized to use with milk. What kind of milk do you drink in your coffee? Just teach us a little bit something more about you. And I think what we know as marketers is that people are willing to give you their data or their information as long as it's a payback for them. So then how do we then thoughtfully refine the recipes that we send you, or give you tips about how to best froth the type of milk that you've told us you use? And we have a content engine that allows us to really start to bifurcate and separate all these different cohorts of consumers and start to give them much more personalized, not just products. Sure, product recommendations should be easy and come first, but also experiences and content that enrich your Nespresso experience. Another good example, simply like outside of first party, because I know not everyone's in that space, is Reddit or Facebook. In both places, we have these rabid fan audiences. And it is only a matter of clicking over and seeing what people are talking about to understand what people are looking for. And so then you think about how does that drive insights that then inform upstream product development, things that are coming. I'm going to be honest, we haven't unlocked the process piece of that because there's so much. I mean, it's like, water from a fire hose or something, right? You could take in a lot of information, and it's not formal focus groups, and it's not, the formalized data process, but there's something to be unlocked there. And how do we internalize that, turn it into valuable data points that then does inform our strategies and marketing and personalization efforts going forward? Yeah,
that's fascinating. A way to kind of like empower those big loyalists to help kind of continue that marketing message in kind of interesting ways. And when I think about Reddit, I think about Facebook, just because where Basis sits, we're more on the paid advertising side.
Right.
Are those areas that you all play in to put ads in those channels that, hey, people are already talking about our product, there's these loyalists here, there's these folks that are involved with it? Or can you, I guess, talk about even more broadly like your paid media strategy and how that is incorporated in your overall marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer to your question is, we're sort of a very healthy mix of channels and platforms, and that's really a factor of where we are from a business strategy standpoint, which is still in household penetration build mode, right? We have generally grown awareness to a pretty healthy level in the US versus 10 years ago when we launched. We've really only been around that long in the US. But we're still really in household. The opportunity among coffee drinkers in the US is still significant. So then you start to think about, well, where are people spending their time? And we need to show up there in some way, shape, or form. Again, going back to that consumer experience loop, where does their mindset when they're on Facebook versus when they're on Reddit versus when they're, watching TV? And so we show up in different ways throughout based on that. We're active on Facebook and Reddit. We sort of have shown up in many ways all over. But I also think it's interesting to be a bit of a voyeur about when you're looking at your brand and how people are talking about it versus pushing something there. There's a really beautiful Facebook group that has like tens of thousands of people in it. And as a consumer, I go there and I watch and I don't engage and I don't tell anybody I work at Nespresso, but you can join the group and just see the conversations people are having. I don't need to push myself there. I joked that that would be like mom and dad showing up at your high school party. You don't want mom and dad there, but there's value to those conversations that we can pull out of it. So from a media mix standpoint, super healthy, definitely video forward. Streaming is big for us right now, but that's because of where the consumer is. And then these other platforms are really about garnering insights and letting people have their fandom without necessarily feeling like we have to be there pushing something in their face.
I love that. I love that. Can you give me an example of maybe some of those insights that you've been able to, whether it's you individually or folks on the team, some of those observations that the kind of like lighter, smaller data pickup, or even some of the bigger data from some of that first party data that you all have access to, you've been able to glean, and how you've applied that for maybe more creative, maybe more thoughtful type of messaging?
Yeah, I can think of two that are maybe relevant to share and very different. One is something as simple as we started noticing on social media and our listening that everyone in a COVID world and even a post-COVID world, they were posting their coffee nooks. They were talking about not just their machine, not just their coffee in a mug, but all the accessories around it. And it's sort of like counterintuitive in a way with Gen Z, like small houses, like not a lot of space, but they're like decking spaces out. And we said, there's something here. So we started tiptoeing our way into content just to see, does that resonate? And then you say, okay, well, we have accessories with our we sell machines and coffee, but also accessories. So whether it's mugs or holders for our capsules or things like that, we were able to really start to see an uptick in some of our accessories sales because of the way we were listening to that sort of cultural insight and seeing that people wanted that. And how do you surround your product and make it more of a lifestyle? So that's one. The other way we do it is like when we launch a new coffee, we're launching new coffees all the time. We'll go and we'll hear what's that quick feedback. How is it? How is the feedback we're hearing about the flavor as people try it? Are they going to repeat? Should we adjust forecasts? Should we think differently about that next? If it's a flavor, what's the next flavor? And really gives us that insight. Again, the data will flow through, but you don't always really know the why behind it. And yet people will tell you the why if you simply just go look for it or ask them.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. You mentioned their, younger demographics. The could be current coffee drinkers or the future coffee drinkers, and some of those different behaviors.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about that? And maybe drilling in specifically on Gen Z, and how have you kind of rethought your approach? How is that a work in progress? Just kind of interested in what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, the cohort of Gen Z coffee drinkers is fundamentally different than any other coffee drinker before it, which is like maybe bold words, but it's true. They absolutely think of coffee as cold, flavored, and likely out of home. My introduction to coffee was none of those things. It was hot, it was a big pot of coffee, and it was at home, and my parents were drinking it just to get out the door. And you can pinpoint a lot of reasons what's driving that. I just heard someone recently say, which I think is so interesting, that part of the reason Gen Z loves an iced coffee is because, not just because of the taste of it, but because it comes in a clear cup most of the time. And so it makes for a better Instagram post or TikTok post. And I was like, oh, that's so simple. And yet I never really thought of that as the unlock. We think of them as like fundamentally a different generation. They like coffee differently. Well, it's also being driven by this like cultural movement. And so that's really guiding us in the entire marketing journey, right? You think about the 4 Ps. It's changing us in terms of how we think about what products are we developing. Are we over-indexing on coffees and machines that are customized to be cold or really specifically to deliver that best-in-class experience? It's also in how we show up. So the other big thing about Gen Z, when you think about cultural currency of social media, is they don't just want a sample of a coffee and like move on, like the old school like demos of yesteryear, right? They want something that they can post on social media, to the point around the iced coffee. And so this summer, as an example of how we're evolving our Gen Z strategy, we took over the iconic Ferris wheel on the Santa Monica Pier in California, and we took over some of the gondolas and turned them into iced coffee cafes. And now we could have just done that because it's fun and to get attention, but it was because we launched a lower price point machine that's the smallest footprint ever that we've ever had, and it's colorful colors. So you combine all those things, and it was a really fun idea to say, let's get attention on this machine. We're still in prospecting and acquisition mode, but do it in a way that isn't just it's on promo or here's why you should buy it. Give them something to experience with the brand. And I think that speaks to how we're evolving and still learning and getting feedback, and that was really successful for us as a result.
Yeah, I love that. What about, I imagine it may have been part of that, but working with influencers, have you
Yes.
seen success with that, kind of tapping into that, where it's less of you all saying, hey, this is what you want, go out and buy this, that it's your favorite influencer?
Yes,
Encouraging you.
absolutely. I think we've also evolved our influence. We call it influence marketing, even more than influencers, because yes, it's about the people, but you think about what's at the core of that, and it's really about how you influence decision and purchases. And so thinking of it that way, there's a couple tiers of it. There's sort of the unpaid part, which is hosting and relationship building and more of your traditional PR space, which we do a lot of. Then there's the paid piece, which is, okay, I'm going to send you my new machine. I want you to tell your own story of it. That requires a lot of trust and data mining to make sure that the audience that you're tapping into through that person is just like any other paid media channel. And actually think about measurement differently with that too, because if it's media, then it's working dollars. Then I need to measure it from an ROI standpoint, not just that I like the content and did people click on it, right?
Yeah.
It's actually about sales, and we can start to convert that. And then there's a really interesting third piece of influence marketing, which I think is still sort of new, which is that influencers inherently know how to create content for this new generation. That's their bread and butter. That's their business, even more than us. Like, we're selling coffee. They're selling content online. And so why not use them just to help us create this like massive beast of content that we need? And so we worked with our agency Nimble to create a whole program where we're hiring influencers not for their influence. We're hiring them because they know how to create the content, and we need content in quick turn for media outlets, and so that it doesn't feel quite so like push advertising. So that's been a new and interesting way, I think, to tap into that same zeitgeist that you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. What about, I mean, I think the kind of rise of social media, it's almost, it's old now. It's reached a level of maturity and sophistication. Are there any emerging technologies, I think, either from like a MarTech or an ad tech perspective, or even consumer technologies that you're taking a closer look at and kind of fascinated by?
Yeah. So I love that you started with social media kind of being like, yeah, it's like it's the air we breathe.
Not
at
trying
this
to
point.
dismiss it. It's powerful.
No. I love it because that's where I grew up,
yeah.
and I used to joke actually because I once had a title that was like digital account manager, and I was like, now everyone's a digital account manager.
Yeah.
What even is that, right? I still joke about that and how that was just because we were in capability building mode, and now it's a capability we all have to have. But yeah, I think, sorry, I completely blanked on your question.
Yeah,
sorry.
just emerging technologies.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So in terms of emerging technology, one that was really interesting that we're piloting this year that we're trying to unlock is the idea of attention units. So of course you can create the right content, put it in the right place at the right time, but if the unit is not running in a place where it's getting attention, or if you don't have the content that's going to disrupt people and drive attention, then probably that dollar is, it's the next level of brand safety and sort of all those IAB standards in a way.
Viewability, right, at another level.
Exactly,
right? Yeah,
it's taking things to another level. And when it was brought to my attention, it sort of was like so obvious, like why are we not thinking or talking about attention and where we're buying things and how we're buying things and the content that's there, how are we not talking about it from an attention standpoint? We all know the goldfish thing, right? Like we all have 1 second of attention, right? Or something like probably less than that now. And so we're piloting it, but it's not just to say we're piloting attention as another metric to add to the mix. What we challenged the team with was how does that connect to sort of MMM data? So MMM data, we can't optimize in flight with media on MMM data, but that's really how we measure our business KPIs. But you can't optimize to that. So how are the two connected? And could attention build the bridge between the two?
Be that kind of leading indicator, right?
Yeah. We haven't cracked it yet. Admittedly, we're like on that journey, but that was, if there's an unlock there, all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's some real optimizable real-time KPI in media buying that then we know is going to correlate to an increase in like brand equity as a KPI, right? And that's super interesting because otherwise there's only proxies you can use.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a fun new digital space. Yeah.
All right, so 2024, year of attention, maybe?
Who knows? You heard it here first, right?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I think there's like something magical about like, for me, I know when I consume coffee, I'm able to pay a little bit more attention. I'm a little bit more tuned in. I'm a little bit more awake. I've got the energy. So
I like the connection.
It's a nice little tie-in there.
Yes.
I guess the one last question that I've got for you, if you had a magic wand and you could fix one thing within the industry, let's say maybe like more marketing and advertising industry, what's that one thing you would fix?
Such a good question. I think I have a personal bee in my bonnet about big ad agencies right now. And it's more in the creative space because, again, that's more where I grew up. And I've worked with a lot of big agencies. I started my career at a big agency. So it is not pointing fingers, except to say that there's this divide right now between the creative art of advertising. That's the Cannes Award win, Cannes Lions and things like that. And it's wonderful, and I appreciate that. And like, I would love to have a Cannes Lion one day, sure. Wouldn't we all? But it sometimes feels like it's at odds with the real business driving KPIs. And I don't know that a lot of big ad agencies have unlocked or rethought the business and the industry to say, we're not just in it for our own films and our own creative books and all of this, but like, we actually should be a partner in building the business. And I think the bigger theme of that is that marketing is fundamentally being asked to play a different role with the CFO today. Because of data, it's a double-edged sword, you should be able to prove out, measure, track, like justify, all of it. And you still can't, but you can do better. And so you need creative partners, whether ad agencies or not, who are fueled by the same fire. Not just we launched another ad campaign, but actually we launched 47 different things that we tested and learned and A/B tested, all of this. And look how it drove your business. I think media agencies have been motivated in that way for a while, but not always the creative side. And so I've felt over the past few years like a tension between that and made shifts in terms of who we work with and how we measure them and how we KPI our agency partners as a result of that. Not everybody's open to it because again, Cannes Lions still matter and they're still beautiful. This is still a big part of the industry. I'm picking on Cannes Lions, but you get the picture. And I'd love to see that solved and figure out what is that next future of like really having creative be part of your business partnership.
Yeah, it almost seems like that more of like performance mindset impacting the brand and the branding side of it. That it's not just about one very specific KPI. It's that full infinity, right?
Exactly.
The full circle that you'll have.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid or the coffee already.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
I appreciate you sharing so many wonderful insights and things for me to kind of think about and consider. And hopefully all the folks that have tuned in, they've got some good takeaways as well. So thanks so much, Jessica.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.